How do you future-proof your career in an ever-changing world? We're going to talk about that. And this episode is special because it applies multi-generational. I can't wait to get started. Welcome to Women Leaders on the Move, a C-Suite radio podcast. I'm your host, Natalie Benamou, and every week I learn right alongside you as I talk with amazing guests. I'm also the founder of Her C-Suite, a portfolio career network and community where women are building what's next, staying in demand, and being relevant in this ever-changing world. Check it out at hercsuite.com. Today's guest is Angela Finlay. She's a chief human capital strategist and former CHRO, an educator who helps organizations and professionals rethink what it means to build a successful career in today's ever-changing workplace. We're going to talk about all the things that will hit every one of us, whether we're moms, sisters, aunts, daughters, wherever you are in your career and life. I've got something in this conversation for you. So let's get started now. Angela, I'm so excited to welcome you to Women Leaders on the Move today. Thanks for being on the show.
Thank you for having me.
This topic is going to resonate multi-generational, which is why I'm so excited about that, because we are both moms. We have kids that this relates to, and there's a long trajectory of careers that are going to listen to this and be, oh, this is going to have a light bulb moment. There's going to be light bulb moments. So for our listeners to get a sense of you, I always like to ask, give us a snapshot of how we got to this moment today.
I am currently sitting as a fractional interim CHRO through a consulting practice that I've had for a while now. And that was a culmination of me just loving HR through the years. I actually started as an accountant, so I'd give that caveat that I loved accounting, not so much, and then loved HR and moved on from there. Loved what I did and just wanted to be able to find ways to do it with lots of organizations instead of just one. And so that's been my business. But I'm a person of curiosity and passion, and I tend to get bored doing just one thing. So I have also been teaching. I teach two different programs at Columbia University in their master's programs. One called Information and Knowledge Strategies, which is their AI program, which is kind of fun to be in that group right now. And the second being Human Capital Management, which is clearly near and dear to me. And I wrote a book. So again, in my curiosity, thinking about what the future of work looks like in all my different spaces, and you and I have talked with kids and everything else going on, it was my opportunity to say, what do careers really look like and how do you future-proof it? And so I wrote a book called Skill Stacking, Taking Ownership of Your Career in Changing Times.
Well, we're certainly living in changing times. So this is totally current for all the listeners, and it'll be current for a while, I think. But I'm interested about the two things that you're teaching because they are somewhat related, but also maybe not. Human capital and AI, especially in an era where they're getting replaced by AI and needing to upskill to be current with AI. And that's your skill stacking kind of probably falls into that a little bit. What has that been like about the human side and then the technology side for you? How does that work for you?
It's a fun space to be in right now. And so I clearly nobody wants to hear AI from me. I can vibe code and have all kinds of fun in Claude all day long, but you don't want me teaching you AI necessarily. So I teach a class called Leading Collaboration, and it's a fun class from the standpoint that we talk about, why do humans collaborate? Why do humans exist in a space where they collaborate versus my dogs collaborating or things along those lines? And then we get into how do we really think about collaboration, especially in times with AI, right? Because now I'm collaborating with probably AI agents and I'm collaborating with people around me. And I think it's so relevant for everybody because not only do we have to constantly be thinking about how we're building our skills, I keep saying our skills are our currency now. It's not your job title, it's not your resume, it is the skills you can bring to the table and how you can use them in a different situation every single time. And this class, we get into really understanding how do I capitalize and cultivate all of these skills and get everybody to pull together to have this bigger group of skills that includes technology and allows for us to build something better and bigger. And on the HCM program, we talk about skills from the standpoint of understanding other areas in depth. And a lot of times they're career pivoters. There are people that maybe were in supply chain management that say, I see where this career is going and I'm going to shift now to human capital management. There will still always be people, but clearly it's going to be in flux and changing over the next few years of what that means, but we still have people. So let me get a better sense of it. And that's stacking skills. That's me trying to find some other skills that I can then add into my portfolio that make me more valuable at the end of the day.
I love that you talked about portfolio. That's what I talk about all the time, portfolio career. We're no longer vertical in the traditional sense. And I know you talk about people over 40, which is that time in our lives where we have the capacity to look at our expertise in a way that can lend it to multi-hyphenate opportunities. You mentioned you've got a book, you are a professor, and you also are fractional. So that is like a great example of that. How do you help people? I know you've got something, I think it's called the 20-second stack. You had something I saw. Tell me what that is. I want to know, how do I think differently about this that we're talking about?
It's funny. People go, oh, so was your goal to write a book? And I said, it was never my goal to write a book. It was one of those things where I was just genuinely curious about what is this all going to look like? And, it's with teenagers and everything. I just wanted to know what this is all going to look like. And so on LinkedIn, I was posting lots of articles about things and like commenting on it. And at some point, someone came back and said, maybe you should write a book. And I said, oh, that sounds really challenging. I'm not sure. And it took me 2 years. So clearly it's not a slow or a fast process to do it. But in the time, part of what I was really honing in on is if I'm going to write a book, what could I provide that's useful to someone to really inventory your skills? Because what I find, whether you're a 40-year-old in transition or you're my college student who just graduated yesterday in your commencement ceremony, we do a terrible job saying what our skills are. I'm an accountant, but an accountant is so much bigger than that, right? It could be project management, it could be analysis, it could be relationship management. There are all these different skills that go into my ability to do that. And most of us shortchange ourselves when we do that. So I tried to put it into a model of stack, which is supportive skills, like your foundational ones. What are the things that, like, I know employment law, good, bad, or indifferent. I know it across the board. I can apply it in lots of different situations. I know accounting, whether I loved it or not, right? So those are my supportive skills. The T is the tactical skills. That's how I get things done. My ability to manage resources, my ability to get things done on time, to be able to be resourceful is something that's part of that. Adaptive, my ability to shift and pivot and adjust is part of it. And then complementary, which everything you read right now will say these are the skills that are most important right now, which are my ability to relate to other people, right? How do I complement and bring people together and work with people and be able to harness the collaboration we talk about in that one particular program? And then K being my knowledge seeking. How do I really find ways to be curious, even if it doesn't make sense on why it's curious, because it always is helping me see things in a different light. And what I often have said to people is none of us can sit down and find a way to truly just inventory our skills because we're just so quick to pass it off that if you take 20 minutes once a week and say, what's one thing I did this week, right? And it doesn't have to be something I did at work, right? I always joke, I run a running club. I don't know why I signed up for this for 10-year-old boys at my kids' school. And there are 15 10-year-old boys I have to convince to run 2.5 miles. I don't know if you know anything about 10-year-old boys. They typically don't listen very well. And, And I always say there are so many skills I have cultivated, learning how to corral 10-year-old boys to run 2.5 miles, which doesn't sound really fun. It may be bribery at Dunkin' at the end of the run, but whatever it may be, I've cultivated these skills. They're useful. They're things that will actually apply to other things I do. And so if I can pick one thing I did this week, one thing I think I did well, or maybe one thing I didn't do well, because that's my gap analysis, and really sit back and say, what did I bring to the table? Right. And if I kind of walk through the stack model or whatever it is, what are the skills I actually did? What are the things I honed in on? And start to keep this list of things. You will find you are so much bigger with what you bring to the table, and to your point, the portfolio, than you ever realize, but you just have to be intentional and take the time to do it.
It's so interesting that we're having this conversation right after I host a bi-monthly program on women on boards. And today, the topic, my partner that leads that was talking about board resume. And it's different than your corporate resume, as you know, but we were talking about skills as it relates to boards. It's different for boards, but it's the similar concept of knowing how to put it in that it will relate to the person that you're talking to. And I think so often we discount the things that come easy to us as not relevant to a situation. So as you think about the future, what are some things that you are seeing people are doing successfully to be more relevant in this time of constant change?
It's twofold. One, being able to truly understand what you bring to the table and not shortchange yourself is the first part. And then the second part is being intentional. And this is where you can use AI and all of that to create your own narrative, right? How do I put this together in a way? Don't let AI do it all for you, but help you kind of configure it, right? But how do I put this together in a way where I can prove my skills and how it relates to this situation? So I have a client where they were hiring for a position and we're not having a lot of success for this particular position. It was a very specialized one. And so, very limited talent pool, and they're very specific on the type of people that they will hire. Interestingly, the CEO was referred to a potential candidate who on paper would have never made it through the applicant tracking system, as we all know, because they didn't check, probably half the boxes that were in there. And part of the conversation I was having with the CEO is he did this thing where he said, fine, I'll interview him, right? But I don't think I'm going to like him, but I'll do it as a favor. And gets in, and the person was compelling because they could talk about what I bring to the table, even if I don't have a job title that you align to, but I can tell you everything I've done and how I can be successful in this. That's the impact, right? So whether it's for a job or you're trying to get into a certain project or you're trying to convince people to put you on a board, it comes down to how well I can create my narrative around it. And, I hear so many of these different situations where having the ability to take the opportunity you have and then sell yourself and be able to show that connection is so important because we shortchange it. It's that whole like everyone knows what I know syndrome. And so I expect you to see where the connections are. People don't. People don't. They're thinking about their own connections, right? And so you have to get it out there and make that case of where your skill portfolio really aligns to what it is that you're doing.
I think this is really timely for anyone that's using LinkedIn because you see an opportunity on LinkedIn and they have an option where you can say, how do I stack up? And I'm always surprised because out of curiosity, every once in a while, I'm like, I don't know, how do I stack up on this thing? Right. And it'll say, like, well, you don't have anything in this area. And I'm like, what are you talking? Like, literally, that's my whole career. Right. And so for people that are running into that, where you're not listing out everything or it's missing, and you gave that person an opportunity, but if AI is the tool that's separating things, what are you telling people if they see something they really want to go for, but the stack isn't lining up? What do you tell people?
That's where you rework it, right? There are two pieces. One, I will say, certainly if you're going through the normal process, you've got to be intentional about making sure your skills are out there. Not that you're making them up, right? Because there's a whole nother issue right now where resumes all are kind of questionable at best, right? But if you're forced to put in a resume, then clearly make sure that you can articulate the things that are in there. That's where your cover letter goes a long way in making that case, because AI does look at those in the process. It comes down to networking, and I know everybody hates it. I was just on a call with a woman yesterday who wanted to chat with me. Saw I was connected to somebody who has a job open, and she said, I hate all this, right? Like, I am a customer service person, right? I enjoy talking to people, but the networking is exhausting. And I said to her, I totally understand it, but that's the way you sell yourself and your skills and who you are and what makes you valuable. And you never know what that next thing will be, right? Like, yeah, I never know if that person I talk to, this goes for my own clients, right? I get a prospective client, I don't hear from them for 6 to 8 weeks. I think that one's pretty much off the table. And then suddenly they go, I remember that person I talked to. Something's come up. I'm going to reach back out to her. You never know where these tentacles start to like connect again. And you just have to be willing to keep having that conversation and be confident that you are making the right narrative around who you are so that they can make those connections on your behalf.
I would say for our listeners to think about, don't start with you, start with the other person. People reach out to me quite often. They'll say, I saw you're connected. Can you help me? And generally, I would like to help people, although, it depends on scheduling, right? But when someone starts out and all they do is just tell you everything in this big, long block, and my brain can't even figure out, well, what is it that you're asking me for? And there's no curiosity on the other side of anything genuine about like being human, like, oh, like we were talking about our kids before, or just connect on something before you launch in. So, how do you tell people that? Like, it's great that you are having these conversations, but I feel like people that don't like networking may not be doing it as a net giving activity instead of a networking activity. Like, think about it like, how can I be curious about the other person first? It's so interesting. It's so much more interesting when you find out about someone and then you don't feel like it's work. I don't know. What do you think about that?
I am 100% on board with you. I was just telling a story the other day about, again, people are reaching out saying, I'm like, decided I'm going to go in fractional space, right? I have been in fractional space for 6 years now. And now it is like the buzzword du jour where everybody loves to talk about fractional. And so I get lots of comments or questions about, well, how'd you start it and all that. And I will often tell everybody, I did not call and sell anybody. I'm married to a salesperson. I'm not a salesperson. That is not my personality. I went out on my own way. We had sold a bank. I decided to opt out of the position and said, I'm just going to try my own thing. I don't know what it is. So let me see what's going to happen. And I ended up calling people that I'd worked with through the years, just saying, hey, I'd love to reconnect. Like, I just love to connect what you're doing, what's going on. I'm thinking about going on my own. If you have any advice for me, since you've worked with me, I would totally love, what you think I'd be good at. And it wasn't a sales process. I wasn't asking for anything minus like, it's been a while, let's talk. And I often say I end up with 2 clients out of just my initiative of like trying to reconnect with people. And to your point, having human connections goes so much farther than you trying to pitch me, right? So part of the narrative, and I guess I should tweak it based on what you say, because I 100% agree with you, is part of the narrative is you being able to say yourself, but also like what's in it for me, right? On the other side, and building the relationships, because I have people coming out that I built relationships with 10 years ago. I had a client come to me like 6 months ago from somebody I worked with 12 years ago that said, hey, I've always respected you. You were great to work with. I just adored working with you. You think we could work together again? And I go, that right there is the root of how we do business. If you can build those relationships and keep them going, and not when you're just in job search, that's really where you have the impact.
I think it's planting the seeds along the way of your career. If you're in the same company, I know people that have been in the same company for a long time and they don't network out or they don't make connections out. And then sometimes we think, well, they're not going to want to hear from me, right? It's too much time has passed. Don't let those messages get in your way when you're making those connections.
We're in a time where loneliness is at the highest level it's ever been. And so having an opportunity to have a human connection with somebody and somebody you have some form of relationship with already is always welcomed, right? Because we're talking to chatbots all day or whatever it is that we're doing. People want to talk to other people. And, it's interesting. I got a LinkedIn outreach the other day from a girl who used to drive my kids, right, to activities. And she was at the university down the street from me. A couple of times I talked to her about her career and what she was going to do when she graduated. And she sent a note to me and said, "Hey, I don't know if you remember me. You had great advice. If you're open to it, I'd love to chat with you and just, tell you what I'm doing. And, any advice, I think you'd be super helpful." Loved it, right? Like, I love the fact that somebody is willing to have that connection, stay in touch, remember people. And you can't get anywhere if you don't even ask and start the conversation.
Hey, it's Natalie, and I want to invite you this month, especially in Chicago. We have several in person events coming up. It's a way to engage with amazing women. And if you're not in the Chicago area, but you'd love to connect with us, please visit us at hercsuite.com. You can check out all the things that we have going on the events page. And let's get back to this conversation now. If people are thinking about pivoting right now because there's so much change going on, how can skill stacking help you in that moment of transition?
What I think is the value of the skill stacking concept and being able to truly inventory your skills is that I can see everything laid out on the table. So if I'm going to pivot, it is not me pivoting based on what my job titles were and me going, okay, well, how does an accountant then go to this, right? It is me saying, here's my whole portfolio of skills and what I can do. What different paths can I take from here, right? Like I always say, careers are now pathfinding journeys, right? They're not paths, they're pathfinding journeys. And so it could be paths off in multiple different directions. What different paths could I take? And then being able to look at the skills I have, what's maybe a gap or two in there, and then kind of move in that direction. I think it really comes down to not thinking that it is you just scrapping everything you've done and changing. It is you saying, here's everything I have to bring to the table. Maybe here's one or two more skills I need to add, and then be able to start down that journey.
You have something on your website that helps people do this. Describe it.
I do. So Windward HCM, which stands for Human Capital Management.com/podcasts. On that, I have a link to my book, if that's helpful, but I also have an app that you can feed your resume into, you can put in information, and it will help you inventory your skills. This is not my normal day job. This is a curiosity and passion thing. So this was just meant to be one of those things where if it can help somebody just start to build their skill profile, my hope is that it will get somebody at least the first step in to start writing down where their skills are, start to put them on the path to their next thing.
I love that. And I will have it in the show notes. If people want to find you, where is the best place to go?
Windward HCM is where you'll find me for the fractional interim work and white papers I do on what we're seeing inside of organizations. LinkedIn.com/A Blum, BLUM, Finlay, FINLAY is where you can follow me on LinkedIn. And I post every day of what I'm seeing in the market from a career perspective and an organizational perspective.
Amazing. I have so enjoyed this conversation. I'm so glad that we connected. Thank you for sharing all this information with our listeners today.
Thank you for having me. It's been a great time.
Thanks for spending your time with us today. I hope if you found this episode helpful, you will share it with a friend or a colleague. And especially if this really resonated, will you rate and review the show? It's how other people find us. Most importantly, I would love you to find me. Visit LinkedIn and connect with me, and let's explore how we might collaborate, or I would love to see you in her C-suite and see all the amazing things that unfold with our community. As always, keep shining your light bright. The world needs you.